He was the man who made the world believe gravity could be defied. But on that night, gravity won. And it was that fall that made the story immortal. Gene Kelly was more than just a dancer. He was the symbol of an era. The man who taught Hollywood how to move. His dancing never looked like technique, it looked like freedom. As if his body could never tire, as if the stage were his natural habitat. So when he challenged Sammy Davis Jr. at Frank Sinatra's birthday party, no one asked why. Everyone was thinking only one thing: who would win? But no one expected how it would end. December 12, 1963, Beverly Hills. A massive estate glowing with chandelier light and filled with the sound of jazz. This wasn't just a birthday party. It was a concentration of power, talent, and ambition. In rooms like these, careers were made, and destroyed. Sammy Davis Jr. arrived around 8 in the evening. Impeccable tuxedo. Confident stride. At 37, he was everything thousands of performers dreamed of becoming: successful, in demand, adored by audiences. He could do it all: sing, act, dance, joke. But most of all, he understood the stage. Gene Kelly was older. 51. Still in shape. Still capable of things others could only dream of. But the world around him was changing. Movie musicals were fading. Younger names were getting louder. And somewhere deep inside, Gene felt it. Late in the evening, champagne did what it always does: not drunkenness, but honesty. The kind that appears when filters disappear. Gene saw Sammy standing near the piano and approached him without a smile. "Everyone says you're the greatest dancer," he said. "But that isn't true." The room fell silent. This wasn't just a challenge. It was the cry of a man afraid of becoming the past. Sammy didn't argue. In Gene's eyes he didn't see arrogance, he saw fear. Fear of being forgotten. Still, Gene pressed on. "Let's prove it. With a dance." When the swing music started, the air seemed to thicken. Sammy went first, fast, bold, on fire. His movements flashed like sparks. He wasn't dancing, he was speaking to the music. Then Gene stepped forward. And it was a different language. Less speed, more meaning. Every movement precise. Every pause intentional. This was the dance of a man who had lived his life on stage. The audience didn't choose sides. They understood, they were witnessing history. Minutes passed. Applause never stopped. But the body cannot be fooled. Around the 15th minute, Gene took a risk. His signature move. The leap that had earned ovations for decades. And in a split second, everything collapsed. He slipped. He fell. Not beautifully. Not symbolically. For real. The music stopped. The silence was deafening. This was the moment it could have ended. The winner was obvious. Sammy could have stepped back and let history take its course. But instead, he stepped forward. He knelt beside Gene and spoke so quietly only he could hear. "You don't have to prove anything. You already have. Let's get up. Together." There was no pity in the gesture. Only respect. Sammy helped him to his feet, and turned it into movement. Into dance. Into a continuation of the story, not its end. The music began again. Slower. Deeper. Now they weren't dancing for the audience. They were dancing for each other. And the room understood, this was no longer a competition. It was a reconciliation, of time and talent, youth and experience, pride and dignity. When it ended, the applause was louder than anything Frank Sinatra himself had ever heard. Later, Gene would say, "I thought I lost everything in that moment I fell. But in truth, I found a friend." From that night on, they grew close. Not publicly. Not for show. Truly. They called each other without reason. Gave advice. Offered support. Learned from one another. When Gene worked on choreography, he asked Sammy's opinion. When Sammy prepared a show, Gene sat quietly in the audience. They stopped proving. They started sharing. After that night in Beverly Hills, guests left the party shaken. They weren't talking about contracts or roles or money. They talked about what they had witnessed, a rare moment when human dignity mattered more than victory. Frank Sinatra later said it was the greatest gift he received that night. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was real. Two men on a stage showing something Hollywood rarely saw: vulnerability without shame. For Gene Kelly, the night was a turning point. He didn't speak of it right away. Outwardly, he remained the same, calm, composed, professional. But inside, something shifted. He no longer felt the need to prove he still had it. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to be not a symbol, but a man. He began to look at younger performers differently, not as threats, but as continuations. New styles no longer felt like competition. He observed. He learned. He was inspired. Sammy learned something too. He was already a star, but after that night people spoke of him differently, not just as a great performer, but as a man of rare inner strength. He realized that respect isn't earned through applause, but through choices no one forces you to make. Their friendship was never performative. No publicity. No staged appearances. Just shared meals, long phone calls, silent presence in rehearsal halls. Sometimes Gene would sit quietly while Sammy worked, saying nothing, then offer one sentence that mattered more than 10 critiques. Sometimes Sammy would visit Gene while he choreographed films, watching a man who had changed dance still searching for new forms. And he understood, greatness isn't a destination. It's a process. In 1969, while preparing a major television special, Sammy asked Gene to choreograph a number with him. Many were surprised. Why would a star of the new era turn to a legend of the past? But when it aired, all doubts vanished. It was a dialogue between eras, precision and energy, calm and explosion. One of the most celebrated dance performances in television history. Backstage, Gene said quietly. "Notice, we didn't compete again." Sammy smiled. "And once again, we both won." Years passed. Age took its toll. Gene could no longer move as he once had. But now, it didn't hurt. He knew his legacy hadn't disappeared. It lived on in the bodies and movements of others. When Gene Kelly passed away in 1996, people from multiple generations came to say goodbye. And when Sammy was asked to speak, the room fell silent, just as it had in 1963. He didn't talk about films or awards. He spoke about the fall. The silence. The choice. "That night, I thought I was helping him," Sammy said. "But he was helping me. He showed me that accepting help isn't weakness, it's courage." Then he paused and added. Gene liked to say he flew when he danced. But the truth is, no one flies alone. Someone always keeps you in the air. Sometimes, just by reaching out a hand. Years later, reporters asked Gene about the greatest moment of his career. Everyone expected him to name his iconic films. But he always gave the same answer. "The most important moment was when I fell. Because that's when I learned that greatness isn't about never falling. It's about getting up with dignity, and having someone beside you who reminds you who you are." He said it calmly. Without bitterness. Without regret. And perhaps that was his final, and most important, role. Because time takes speed. Time takes strength. But it never takes the ability to be human. And if there is a true victory in this story, it isn't in the dance. It's in the choice. The choice to lift someone up instead of walking past. The choice to preserve dignity, your own and another's. Sometimes, it is that choice that makes us immortal.